All right, thank you. I just want to thank everyone for coming. We're so excited to have you and to listen to Leslie this morning. So I'm going to have Jared introduce our speaker this morning. If you guys, afterwards, we will have time for questions, so please hold your questions till the end, and we will get those.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Exciting to see a room filled of people supporting Leslie Friedel today. So I have a few things to ask. Leadership's easy, right? How many people think it's difficult? All right. Did you, okay, just making sure, because this would be really awkward if you said it wasn't. But no, Leslie's got 15 years experience in the nonprofit sector, passionate about that side of the business. She is a very committed member to the medical industry. And the other thing that I can really say about her is her passion around leadership and development. And just a little story that reminds me of Leslie. I was actually on the board of visiting nurse before it switched over to Stillwater Hospice. And I actually got to be in the room when they were talking about interviewing and hiring Leslie. And I was so excited because she was in 40 Under 40 with me, and I didn't really know a lot about her. But the cool thing that I got to watch is she got hired, and then I've got to see her growth into this CEO position. And it's been amazing looking from afar, the passion that she puts into everything that she does and builds the leaders in her community. And I can't say enough about Leslie, and I can't wait to hear her speak today. So, Leslie.
For having me today. Jared is actually one of the, he does not know this, but during our 40 Under 40 was probably one of the, public speaking is not one of my favorite things to do, and if you know me, you know that I will say that to everybody that talks to me. And Jared, they did a Russian roulette style, so you didn't know when you were going to get called. I don't know if you probably didn't impact you like it did me. But they were saying, this was several years ago, but they would say, okay, this name, they're not alphabetical order, not in any sort of order. And so they were calling on people, and then you had to get up and give an impromptu speech. And that was too much for me. And so Jared goes up. I think you jumped or did a back. What did you do up on the stage? I don't know how he box jumped the whole stage.
I did not do the traditional way up onto the stage.
And he went before me. So when I got up, it just added to my anxiety. So I go up on the stage very gently, and I couldn't even get enough air to say my actual thank you to the people that came with me that night. And I was like, and I'm out here. So this is a big deal for me to be here in front of this room, but I just thank you for having me, and I am passionate about the work that I do and the team at Stillwater Hospice does, and I'm also really passionate about leadership, so thank you for having me. I also, just going along with that same thing, I think the person that you never want to follow is the CEO of Vera Bradley, right? So again, following Jared, following Rob, it's kind of a pattern here, but I have my own clicker. I have to get out of the box for a second. Okay. So a little bit about Stillwater Hospice first, because it's such a big part of my life and such a big part of my values that align so closely with this organization. So I want to talk about that briefly. Stillwater Hospice just got the recognition of being the best hospice for the 5th year in a row. Big deal for our organization, because if you don't know our history, in March of this year, we actually changed our name after having the similar name for over 100 years. So the fact that we changed our name in March and then still were recognized as the best hospice with that name recognition as people went to vote is just really incredible to me, that our mission stands out in the community. So thank you if you voted for us, and we're really excited to have that honor for the 5th year in a row. A little bit about Stillwater is that we have been around since 1888, same organization. We started as a group of women that wanted to see change in the community, a grassroots organization, and we wanted to serve the area's sick poor. And so we the group of women came together and just started doing things for our community. And what I love most about that is still what we're doing today, 134 years later. We're going out to people's homes, serving them where they're at, and it's a really, it's the same type of passion that the women that originally started our organization have, that are here 134 years later. We provide hospice, which if you don't know what hospice is, it is a for those individuals that have a disease that if it progresses at its normal state, they would have about 6 months of life left to live. Many times people live beyond that, and actually under the hospice benefit, many people live longer than they would if they were seeking treatment. So hospice is a really amazing benefit paid for by Medicare or insurances. And what we see is we see most of our people in their homes, so we go and meet them where they're at. And then we also have I'll talk about that in a minute, we have a inpatient unit that you may hear about. It's called Hospice Home out on Homestead Road. But we also provide grief support services. So I wanted to share this with the group today just because it's always nice to be able to share a resource. We have a community grief center that is provide grief counseling to individuals at no cost. So if you ever know somebody that's struggling with grief, especially following this pandemic, we've seen an increase of the people that are struggling. I would encourage you to reach out to us and they can have that service. We currently are covering 11 counties. In 2020, I'm going to give you some timeline here. March of 2020, we acquired Family Life Care, which is a hospice organization out of Bern and Marion, and that almost doubled our size. That happened on March 1st. Let me tell you this. March 12th of 2020, if anybody remembers what happened, we all went home. There was a stay-at-home order, and nobody could go anywhere except for our staff going out and taking care of our patients. So talk about leadership. That will come up in my presentation a few times. How do you lead when you have no access to your people, right? Or it was just such a time of chaos. And how do you build an organization and build up your values and your mission when you don't have access to people as closely as being able to get into a room like this, because we couldn't do that anymore. Every year we provide about $1 million worth of charity care, ability to give people, regardless of their ability to pay, we're able to take care of them. This is where I feel like it's where I'm transitioning here, is that the mission of Stillwater Hospice is to provide compassion, comfort, and guidance through life's journey. And those are personal values of mine, to provide compassion and comfort, and no matter what the situation is. And then the guidance part is really key. You know, when you're going through something like end of life or grief, the question you always want to know is what's coming next. You can't anticipate what's coming. And what I think is so important to our organization is that we're able to share with people and help them through the what comes next. Not every person looks alike, not every grief journey looks the same, but what we can do is help them through that. And I think that is just as much a testament to hospice work as it is to leadership, of helping people know what comes next or helping them through challenging times. So our values are compassion, comfort, guidance, inclusivity, and stewardship. The word stewardship has a lot of different meanings to me. Stewardship means being good stewards of our dollars, right? We fundraise as an organization, we're a nonprofit. We have to be good stewards of our dollars. But the most valuable resource we have is our people, and we have to be good stewards of our people as well. So I think that's the part that I want to focus on today. I mentioned Hospice Home. Hospice Home is a 14-bed unit out on Homestead Road. What we do there is we call that the critical care of hospice. So when people are having symptoms that can't be managed in their setting, maybe they're at home, we can, anxiety, agitation, pain, we can bring them in, get them stabilized, and get them back home. This work's really powerful. Getting people where they need to be and making sure that they're comfortable is our biggest what we can bring to the table. So I want to talk a little bit about compassion. So our team members are extremely compassionate people. You cannot do this work without being compassionate. You have to be able to walk alongside of people at their darkest moments of their lives. And when you see that, when we're hiring people that are doing this work, we know that they have hearts unlike anybody. I mean, they're one of the most valuable resources that any of us have. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is, on the opposite of compassion here is compassion fatigue. So what does that look like? You know, you can say self-care all day long. What does self-care mean to me? Is it going and getting massage? Is it sitting in a room reading a book? Those things don't quite cut it when you're in compassion fatigue. And so we've talked a lot about that over the course of the last couple years, because you're going to hear me in a minute. I'll counter this with decision fatigue, but compassion fatigue is where we're taking care of not only our patients that we're serving, everybody in this room is taking care of a family member. You're responsible for people, right? You're responsible for friendships. You're responsible for any type of relationship. And when those relationships, you can walk alongside them if you're in a healthy place to be able to take care of them. but oftentimes we get that out of balance. I saw a statistic that said from the World Health Organization that since the pandemic, anxiety and depression are up 25% worldwide. It's higher in the United States. So those same people that are experiencing that don't leave their personal life at the door and walk into your places of work, right? They're not saying, okay, I'm walking in, I'm not going to experience this anxiety, I'm going to be fine. And so I think that the one thing that I will just point out is that what can we do, and as employers or as people, coworkers, to support this increase? There's a lot going on around after the pandemic. And so we did some work with our team, and we said we were having some trouble with turnover within the first year. And this is kind of a newer problem for us. People that were leaving without getting through their 1 year. And there's a marker that says, I think it's about 18 months. If somebody makes it 18 months, they're likely to stay with you longer term, maybe up to 5 years. What we saw was people were leaving within that first year, and we didn't understand it. We've been doing this work a long time. We feel like we're pretty good at getting the right people, right? But then something was happening where people were leaving. And we talk about compassion fatigue, but we weren't sure what that was. So we went to our leadership group and we said, what reason do you think people are leaving our organization within this first year? And there were things like hospital systems are offering large bonuses, money, we're not paying enough, we're not these things. And we were like, okay, we hear you. We looked at that, right? We said, what can we do? We can look at the market rates for people. We can't compete with bonuses. That's not what world we're in. But okay, we can look at how are we paying our staff? But then we turned the question around and we said to the leaders, why are you here? Why do you stay? And didn't make this correlation. And they said, I have friends here. I love the work I do. I'm passionate about this organization. I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. And so you see that connection there where we focus so much on large bonuses and money and some benefits. What can we do to make sure that we foster those relationships? So over the last couple years, we've really put a lot of time into saying, how do you give the relational nutrients that the staff need, that the people that are working with us every day need? And some of those things were just learning how to have conversations with people and how to build relationships, maybe not always friendships, right? At work, sometimes that's a little challenging with the leadership team. So how do we build those relationships? And we really saw our turnover rate in that first year drop tremendously. And I'm not saying it's all because of that work. We did a lot of different things at the same time. But I think that was the first question that we started to have to ask ourselves, is when we look in the mirror, are we giving the people that are working with us the same things that we value so much about our work every day? The flexibility, the ability to go home and take care of my family in the middle of the day if I need to. Some of those things are really important to people now. The pandemic fundamentally changed how we do work every day. I need to read this next one to you, so I'm going to grab my papers. So empathy. This is a world we live in every day. We understand what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. That's the most common definition of empathy that people hear. And we know that we naturally attract empathetic people in our organization, but not every organization does. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Empathy by definition, this is the technical definition. Empathy by definition is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the thoughts, feelings, and experience without having the feelings, thoughts, or experiences fully communicated. What I say that means is I see you, I feel you, I hear you, I get it. I'm here with you. And it's been an interesting road for me with empathy. I didn't quite know what empathy meant. I could understand it from, I'm a social worker, right? So I understand fundamentally what empathy is. But I didn't understand my role in empathy and how it's impacted me my entire life. One of the things that I always felt like as I would meet somebody, they were going through something this was before I did this work. They were going through something really terrible. And I felt like I had no words. And the reality was I didn't have words, and many times you don't. And everybody says they come up with some words to say, like, if you need anything, let me know, or we start to come up with things to say, and I realized that I felt paralyzed in the moment that these people needed me the most, right? They'd tell me, I lost my son, I lost my parent, and I would stand there, I didn't have a reaction. I had a reaction, I had a lot of emotion surrounding it, but I didn't have words. And I didn't know at the time, I felt very, very inadequate. Like I should be saying something. So I'd watch people. What do other people say? How do they say it that makes sense to them in the moment? And I realized later, and more so as I've been doing this work, that was empathy at the time. I was feeling it. I was in it. I was with that person, and I held the space with them, but I didn't know what to say, right? And I think that that's sometimes the most powerful thing is just to be there with somebody and not leave. Not leave. You can leave them, but stay with them through their journey and see how you can support them. And it's not always by words. And so I think that if you just, like one of the things that I felt was like you just stand with them in their pain. You be there. You stay there with them. You stay in it, and that really makes more of an impact than any words you can say. And just having moments where they know you're still there. We say a lot of times. The old rhetoric was, you leave your personal life at the door. You come in, you do your job, and then you leave your personal life at the door. And what we do not have the luxury of is doing that. With anxiety and depression being up worldwide, 25% after this pandemic, we have no ability to say, leave your personal life at the door. We have to be empathetic leaders. We have to be there and stand with people during their most difficult times. We can't just keep pushing through and pushing our agendas. And it is hard. I know different industries we have the ability to do a little bit more than maybe some other organizations that are, other types of industries and manufacturing. That's hard. But I would ask as the person that has the most impact is the direct leader, right? So how can a shift supervisor, how can they be taught the skill of empathy to ensure that they can support their people and don't expect leave your personal life at the door? There's a balance there, but I think when people feel heard and valued, you'll see the impact of what your leadership and their work. The last thing I want to cover is decision fatigue. I didn't in my own brain unpack what decision fatigue meant, and one day we do these. Weekly memories of people that have passed away on our service. So we have our social workers, chaplains, grief support team do a recording, and they get on there and they say, they give us a little tip, right? So these are some of the things you might be facing: compassion fatigue. They talk about empathy. They talk about some of these things. It's just brief. And then they read the names of everybody that has passed away for the week. So we can have that time to... That used to be we used to do it in our weekly, what we call interdisciplinary team meetings. A lot of that stuff went virtual, so we figured out we needed to figure out a virtual option for this. And so while we were doing this, these moments where we were learning just little blips of helpful tips, decision fatigue, one of the grief counselors decided to do their little education section on decision fatigue. And I remember sitting there in my office looking at my computer and just started crying. I'm not a crier. I'm not a real crier. I was crying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is defining what's been going on in my world for the last 2 years. Is we took on another organization. We hit full force into a pandemic in a healthcare organization, in an independent healthcare organization that didn't have a corporate office telling us these are the new policies, these are the new procedures, this is how to keep your staff safe. We had no idea. And so every day we were meeting and saying, what levers do we need to pull today to make sure that we have the supplies we need to take care of our patients? And I remember that day, I was just like, oh, decision fatigue, that's so real. I cannot make another decision. I would go home and I couldn't figure out what to even eat for dinner. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to, didn't even turn on the TV because I'm thinking of trying to decide from Netflix I couldn't come up with anything. So I think that the one thing I realized was that when we say, I think this just all circles back to the empathy and compassion, is that this isn't unique to a workplace. So decision fatigue, I was trying to figure out childcare during the pandemic. I was trying to still to this day, you figure out quarantine periods. We're starting to loosen up a little bit from that, but we were all facing so many decisions that we had to give ourselves grace and compassion and give ourselves that empathy to say, I can't do it all. And I think that one thing I talk about, these are the values of our organization. I'll go back to them. Compassion, comfort, guidance, inclusivity, and stewardship. And I think what makes my world so wonderful is that those are my personal values too. And I think as you reflect on where you're currently employed or the teams you're currently working with, are your values in line with the organization's values? And I think that if you can say yes, you feel the grace of giving yourself compassion and empathy. And I think it's such a powerful thing. And so with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. My question about decision fatigue was really intriguing because I was talking to a friend that I travel with a lot, and her concern about when we would talk about this was kind of the fear of being in a rut or stuck in sort of this just this is what I do type thing and not really seeing it as a positive. And so I appreciate you sharing that because I think it's a helpful way to say some things are important and different. Routine is not bad, but I think in her mind it kind of felt like she was just stuck in a way to do that, and I think this is really what she was overcoming. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you sharing that because I'm going to have a good dialogue with her about maybe changing her perspective about that and being open to something different.
Good, yeah, thank you.
I would just piggyback onto the same thing that he just said and just see what strategies or any suggestions that you've specifically come up with. I mean, when you say decision fatigue, the first thing I think of, and anybody that knows me well has heard this, hamster wheel. I mean, how many of us?
Yes.
I mean, that's it. That's where we find ourselves at times. So any suggestions, or even from anybody in the crowd, what do you do to get off that wheel, to live a fulfilled life, to figure things out a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I'll open that up if anybody has anything that's worked for them.
Get Jared's job.
Jared's job. Yeah, talk about decision
Living the
fatigue.
dream.
Yeah. We were just talking about his role at I&M, and it's pretty incredible that the decision fatigue that probably comes from that. Yeah, that's pretty.
This is about you. This is not about me.
You can contribute.
Having a microphone that's not really a microphone. So I really appreciated that you were talking about leaning into your staff and you're really digging into why were they leaving within that year mark. And you talked about, that you changed the way that you were approaching your leadership in terms of how you were going to take care of your team. I'd really like to hear more about the details of like specific items that you changed in the organization that maybe made a significant difference for the people in your leadership team and on your frontline staff.
Yeah, I'll start with, so we started working with a leadership coach during the, and we started to do education pieces with her, and we were realizing that some of that was falling. It was good information for the people that were in the place to be able to receive that information, but really it was falling flat because of the just information overload we're all experiencing and the decision fatigue we were experiencing. So we turned that a little bit, and we started having her meet and almost just do process groups with a couple different groups that we did, real small focus groups with just our leadership. So we have about a 26-member leadership, and what I call leadership is anybody that has a direct report, because those people that are impacting people's lives by, even if they have one direct report, have an impact to change our organization, right, or have an impact on our organization. So we started asking, we would start with, this is really, we almost did it was a group processing. So we would check in, see how things were going, and talk about, started focusing more on ourselves as leaders versus focusing on the organization. So we would say, just how are you doing today? Like, give one word to describe. And we would start to have these conversations and have understanding of how the other person sitting across the table from me was feeling. And I can tell you those were really emotionally packed times together, because we didn't realize how much we were trying to hold it all together. We're leaders. We're going to keep moving forward. And I think that was probably, I won't say that it was really profound or complicated or that what we were doing, but we were really finding that just having those conversations, kind of having that person that just sat with us and said, tell me how you're doing. And I thought, we don't really talk about that. We just keep trudging forward. Some of the things were just simple things, like when we were hiring people for this work, did they know what they were expecting? I mean, when the first time that you walk in, we serve people as young as a day old up to 105 years old. Do you know what it looks like to go in and take care of a child? And were we exposing them to things that they weren't expecting? I mean, when you think of hospice, a lot of times you think of older people, and that's not the case. And so we're seeing really difficult things. And so we started to do more job shadows before people would come in and do, just make sure that they're still interested. We're not interviewing just for us. We're interviewing to make sure it's a good fit for them. That was really, trying to change our orientation and onboarding program to make sure people weren't out there floundering. You're dealing with high emotions in our work. So you're going out there and you're seeing people a lot in hospice. I'll give this example. There's a primary caregiver usually. Sometimes it's a spouse, sometimes it's a child, and they're taking care of their loved one. And they're dealing with their own grief, their own anticipatory grief, and they're dealing with being a caregiver, being in charge of medication. So you talk about decision fatigue, compassion fatigue, all those things. The emotions run hot in our work. And so how are we supporting our staff to make sure that they were able to do this work and feel confident in their skills to be able to go out and do that? That was one of the things that we started looking at how we were bringing people on. We really feel like this one we're still working on. We don't have this down quite yet. There's research, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, that says if you have a friend at work, it's probably a bigger definition than that, but if you have a friend at work, you're more likely to stay. So how do we make sure that we give time for those relationships among their team members? Because nobody understands their work better than the person that's standing next to them that does the same work. So there were a lot of things from the leadership, the people side, and then we also started looking at, I mentioned, are we competitive in our wages? Are we offering good health benefits? Are we offering things to allow people to take care of themselves? We also offer I love this concept, so if anybody wants to take it, please do. We have a wellness day. We've done this for a while, but a wellness day, every employee gets 3 wellness days a year. And they're basically no questions asked, kind of mental health days. I had a rough day yesterday. I can't do this one more day, and if I go in, I will not be my best self. And so people can call in and just say, I'm taking a wellness day, and we don't ask any questions. They get that time. I followed a nurse once that went out, and she took me around to see all of her patients for the day, and she said, we're saving my favorite for last. And she said, so we went and met this lady, and within, she was such a wonderful nurse. She took such good care of this lady. And then a week and a half later, that patient died, and she said, she was one of those that said, I cannot do this another day. These people she gets so close to, had her on with her for over a year. It's really it was challenging for her. So those are the kind of things we build in to make sure that people have the ability to step away. And like I mentioned with the statistics that are coming out, I don't think that's unique to our work. We do tough work, but people are dealing with a lot. So if you have any ability to make any decisions, or I feel like that one pays off more than you can imagine if you have the ability to implement something like that.
So regarding the decision fatigue, what's the best way for you to handle that? Is it more of like having a collective group of people to make decision, or the other way wherein you just delegate the decision to certain people who can handle that? So in your context,
Yeah.
Is it both or?
It is both. I think what I have felt works for me, and some of my team's in here, so feel free to speak up. I feel like, for me personally, it's prioritization, more so than, which is another decision, right? Where to land on the decision tree. But I do feel like if there's simple things, some things were catching me up. Like, if an email had too many questions in it, I'd be like, I can't compute, and I would let it go down. And I'm like, if I would have just answered that, or said, these are the easy follow-ups, these are the ones I need more questions. And then the thing I found was causing most of my decision fatigue was email. And so now what I've tried in my own head to flip is just walk down and have a conversation with somebody, call them something, because that question is answered in that moment versus writing an email back, asking another question, another email. Then this just keeps piling up over time. So I think prioritization is a big one, just figuring out what is important. And in my mind, sometimes when things get too big, everything was so important, and I didn't feel like I could categorize it. But the other thing is delegation. What is mine to own? What do I have to be responsible for? And what can somebody else be responsible for that doesn't have to be me? I trust my team. I trust that they know they can make it, most of them for sure, not most of them, all of them can make decisions better than I can. And so what parts are really mine to own? And I feel like that helped. I'm not still out of it, but I think that it's definitely, it's a work in progress. I'm a work in progress with decision fatigue, but.
No, sorry. Getting a 2-for-1 special.
So when the leadership team was trying to decide why the people were leaving so soon, did you ever interview the people themselves, or did you just keep that amongst the leaders?
People themselves, as far as the employees that were leaving?
Yes.
Yeah, I do an exit interview with every person that leaves, if they're willing. And I was surprised, I will say this, that many times, not all the time, some things were our fault, right? I'll own that. Most of the time, though, it was something was going on in their life that they just felt like, I can't continue to do all of this. And I do think, and I'm not sure if anybody has experienced this, but the pandemic also reset our priorities. We were all so focused on work, and all of a sudden it's like everything's in one big pot and you have to figure it out. People were saying, I'm missing too much time with my kids. So everything we're seeing in the workforce in general, the great reshuffle, the great resignation, whatever you want to call it, we saw some of that. But I don't think it helps when if something's hard at home and you're doing hard work, that there's a connection there. Or people didn't feel necessarily connected. They were, also the difference of the pandemic caused on us is that we went straight from our homes to the patient's homes, straight back to our homes. Like we didn't have that time where people were coming into the office. We changed how we were delivering supplies to patients. We would now do the Amazon Prime, I call it, it's not Amazon Prime, but it's the Amazon Prime of supplies, where medical supplies are just dropped off directly at the patient door, so there's not having to have staff come into the office and potentially spread COVID at the time. And medications are delivered directly to the home, so not interacting with people. And I think that's one of the biggest risks we have, is that the isolation of doing this work and in general, the relationships are more important. And we heard some of that too. It was impacting mental health.
So your last comments lead me in really well to my question thoughts. Can you talk a little bit more about the options that are available at the Peggy F. Murphy Grief Center? Because anyone in the room who knows me knows that I'm an extreme extrovert, and I love talking with anyone, but sometimes that talk therapy isn't maybe for someone. And so as I just think about, you talked about isolation or the need to be in community and thinking about our support group. So people that would understand, can you share a little bit about that in case people in the room are unaware?
I'd love to. Yes. So the Peggy F. Murphy Community Grief Center is located out on Homestead Road. I mentioned it briefly in the presentation. We do individual grief counseling, but we do a lot more than that. So recently we realized that people maybe didn't necessarily need or want individual grief counseling. They wanted the community part. They wanted to be able to come together with others that were facing the same thing as them. So we started, we brought Vicki on staff, and Vicki's been looking at what kind of programs can we run that the most introverted person could come and do, and the most person that needed the connection the most, what programs would work for them. And so she started a mindfulness and meditation program around grief. And then she started, and it's called Invisible Ink. It's a prompted journaling program where people come in and give journal, and they write letters to their loved one that's passed away, and that way that they can do this as independently as they want. Both types of that work, meditation, prompted journaling, those programs are available, and we're going to keep those running. And so those are people that maybe they want to kind of be with other people that are like them, maybe connect with one person in that group, but they can get as involved or as removed as they want from that group because of whatever they need in their grief processing. The other thing that we have our grief support groups, and the grief support groups have all different types of different topics. We have a women's support group, a men's support group. We have 2 different groups running that are for people that have lost someone due to suicide. We have one that's due to people that have lost someone to a drug overdose. Because that grief is so different. It's so different for those people, and it's different to be able to go sit in a room and talk to people that are experiencing similar grief to you. So we try to do it at all angles. We also have a telehealth option where if people want to do virtual visits or phone visits if they're not comfortable coming in, and our reach has expanded. During the pandemic, we did COVID grief was really different. So COVID grief, you might think of somebody lost somebody due to COVID. But what we saw actually more often than not was that the hospitals weren't letting visitors in. So this disenfranchised grief of where I couldn't even get in to see my husband after he had a heart attack, and I couldn't get in to see after a major surgery and lost them. And so we were seeing that the guilt, the survivor guilt from some of those things was really real. And so COVID just changed our world as far as the grief center as well. So we did presentations about that type of grief, and we had people from all over the country. People were hungry for that information to know, like, I need support, I need help, and I don't know what to do. And so they logged onto those webinar series, and then we also found some virtual visits and that were really helpful for people that maybe couldn't drive in every day or were fearful to drive in, and so it was really nice to do that too.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I love that you guys have taken your mission and expanded it. I would say even during COVID, like, we all need to learn to do that and look at the big picture. So I think that's amazing. I love that you mentioned the money piece, but you skirted over it quickly, which I think was important, because I think we've thrown money at the problem and then we realized really quickly that money was not going to fix the problem completely. I mean, it's necessary, but in my line of work, we actually have an initiative where we are working with human services, so direct support staff, anybody that is working, think about it, with humans in any capacity, that is an overwhelming job. And what we see, and you've mentioned it a couple times, so money is important, but it is not the end-all be-all. I actually listen to people in human services, and the things that they deal with are so overwhelming. It doesn't matter what amount of money you throw at that certain level, it doesn't fix it. But the coping mechanism for having joy and real connection, which has been our focus, is what people need. So we have the support groups because we have the grief, we have the loss, all of that is so necessary, but also that joy and that connection piece, I think, is where our human services are really craving that. So I love that you were like, yeah, we looked at the money and we dealt with that, but then you went on to the next thing, because I talk to a lot of leaders and they're like, well, I throw all this money at it. They're making great money. I don't get it. It's a new world. It's a new generation of people, and that's not going to be enough. And I think always looking at what you can do, and somebody had asked, did you sit down with your people? Because that's what makes, when you said relationship, yes, you may not be able to be friends with everybody, but they can feel if you're connecting with them and if you actually really care, or if you're just trying to throw money at them. And the next generation of people will not put up with it. They are going out and getting different things, and I think that's the struggle that leaders are having. They don't understand why the things that have worked aren't working. So I think that connection piece is really important for the line of work that we also do for people that also work with organizations like yours. So I really appreciate the work that you guys have done as leaders. And just so you know, we do hear that.
Good.
We work with a lot of human services, and so we hear the organizations that are actually, you can tell they're trying to really make a difference. So we appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Leslie, thank you for your words this morning.
Yes.
I know you to be a volunteer in addition to your day job, as well as you indicated you're a mom. I'm wondering how you prioritize, there's that decision fatigue again, what comes first, and then when it gets to be too much, what goes first?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. That's a great one, Francis. That is I will be honest, that's a balance for me. Mom is always first in my mind, and I think that I hope that for all of you, that if you have a priority that's really important to you, that is what you prioritize. I think being a mom is the most important thing to me, and although I do love my work, I think that it's nice because when all of our values align as an organization, it allows me to be a better parent. But it is hard. I will say that it is hard. It's an ongoing struggle for me to know what balance is. I really have tried to limit my day to a certain period of time where I'm not doing a ton of evening things and things like that. It just pulls me away from a lot of things. I don't always have that luxury, but I think I love to be busy, which is, when somebody mentioned routine earlier, I thought that used to be the word I was like, oh, I don't like routine. I want things to be different. Now I crave routine. I think that's the decision fatigue creeping in. But I do think that there's a way to balance that I'm still a work in progress.
Thank you for your service.
I actually wanted to piggyback on that question and the answer, because I literally have been doing an experiment on myself in this area. And I don't want to give away all of my training, but I've been working on what does it mean to have restorative rest, and not just this whole self-care trend, or, going to get your nails done or a massage. It's not really all that, helpful to restore ourselves. And so I recognized that I was not putting myself first. So the question was, how do you prioritize? What do you put first?
Yeah.
And oftentimes those of us who are in multiple roles, we wear multiple hats, are, especially as females, our first reaction is, oh, my kids come first. Well, our kids can't come first unless we come first.
You're right.
And we really have to learn that selfishness is not really selfishness, when it's just kind of selfish kind of things, right?
Uh-huh.
So working on myself and giving myself the things that I need to feel restored then allows me to be a better coworker, a better wife, or I'm not a wife right now, but I was. Maybe I wasn't doing that great a job. So a better mom, all of those things, all those roles, you do a better job of those things when you are actually paying attention to the things that you need to feel restored at the end of the day. So you're not giving your kids the last part of you because you've reserved, and that's what I was doing. I was reserving as much energy as I possibly could to get to the end of the day. So I was giving my job as much as I thought I could so that I could get to the end of the day and give my daughter as much as I possibly could, so she couldn't see how exhausted I was, but she could see right through it.
That's true.
And so now I've reprioritized, and I'm recognizing that I absolutely have to make myself first, and I can't just chase rest, because rest I realized was escapism. So the massage or the, I'm going to go for a jog, I'm going to go work out or whatever, those things were not actually restoring me.
Right.
They were escapism, so that in that moment I could tell myself that I was doing something for myself, but really it was just taking me away from something else that I knew I needed to get done. So I was just running away. And so recently I've been finding that there are actually things that restore us. And it may be more work, right? For me, I've recognized that if I go work on a patio project in the backyard that was supposed to be a weekend and it's turned into 3 months, that really, that
true.
decision fatigue, right? I can't make a decision. I'm sitting here looking at this computer screen. I need to work on something. This doesn't feel good. I'm forcing myself to do something that is not in my gut right now, right? But what would help me feel good at the end of this day, or reset my mind? Let me go work on this project for about 3 hours, go sweat it out, come back in, and then refocus. And now I'm even better at the end of the day when I pick my daughter up from school, because I've accomplished more than what I would have done if I would have forced myself to stay in the mode that everybody says I'm supposed to stay in.
That is so good. Thank you for that. I needed to hear that. I think that it's good for me. I'm sure it's good for others in the room. I think that that's a really important thing to think about. Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of talk about adult programs at the Grief Center, and I've been in a situation where I've lost somebody. I lost my mother at a young age. What kind of programs do you have for youth?
Right. We have we currently do not do youth programming. Ours is focused on adults and 18 and older. But Aaron's House Center for Grieving Children here in Fort Wayne has programming that we try to work with them if we get somebody that calls in that needs that kind of grief support, and we work with Aaron's House for that. So yeah, that's a good question. Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring in off of what she was saying, that restorative rest, that really is that reconnection with ourselves, because we're so key on connecting with everybody else, but when you don't align and connect with yourself, then that is what you don't have to share. So that rest, connecting with yourself, isn't allowing you to escape into the chaos of this and that and this and that. Instead, align with yourself, and then you have that to make the decisions and to give to others.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. I need to do better at that, for sure.
Leslie, I really appreciate it. I think you've hit on a topic that we've all been struggling with in our organizations. And I do have a question about group processing. In our organization, we have a morning huddle. So in that morning huddle, what we do is we decide what we want to accomplish for that day. So it's full of decisions every day. So what we try to do at the end of the week is try to come around that, because sometimes the environment can be difficult. And we try to go around and ask for everybody to have a positive for the week. But your presentation really forced me or challenged me to look at this differently and ask, how are you doing for the week? And I don't know that we as an organization ask that question enough. But I was just wondering if you could walk me through how you implemented that and how you got people to open up to share what they are really challenging as leaders in the organization, so you could support them to become better leaders. And I think that's the purpose of your group processing.
Yeah. I'm going to actually ask, is there anybody from my team here that wants to talk about how that's went? Sarah's back there in the back. Yeah, there.
Get one person that needs to start crying and open.
That's the truth. Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
Oh. Anybody else that's here that wants to talk about it at all? No?
I can chime in.
Okay, yeah.
So part of that too has been just knowing that my peers, so the groups have been split into groups of peers. So I'm working with all the other directors in the organization, and that also builds a relationship with them to be able to come to them and ask them questions and ask advice of a peer. And I don't think that we all had that connection before meeting and saying, oh my gosh, they're making very similar decisions, or they're just as overwhelmed as I am. And so it's been really helpful to be like, okay, I know that they're struggling with this. We also really build each other up in there too. I can say we've given each other grace to say, like, that's not your problem. You can push that back on someone, or we often say, don't take that as honest feedback. We know that you do a great job, when you get that one person that tells you something was wrong. So I think that's been really helpful too, is kind of breaking it down so you can make that connection laterally, that you don't always feel is there, especially because, like Leslie mentioned, we work so remote and so spread out that we don't see each other a lot. And these meetings have been in person and making us sit at a table across from each other. And it's really been wonderful to have that connection.
Yeah, I think that the one thing I'll say is these are not well scripted. I think that the question that truly leads these entire hour conversations that we do, and you don't have to do it in an hour, you can do it in your huddle, is say two words that describe how you're feeling right now. And most people cannot just say the two words like overwhelmed, and they give a definition of what's going on with them. And it gives you time to hear that perspective, but that give me two words of how you're feeling today. And there's been times that it's been hopeful, it's been excited, there's been positives out of it. So when you're asking about a positive thing, it's not all like this complaint session. We haven't had that. It's where there's days that you see somebody's really doing a great job. And there was a time when our executive team, I think almost all of us started crying because it was not even, all of us are pretty stoic people, and it was like we got in this room and one person, it was like Sarah mentioned, just like started this trickle effect, like we all weren't okay and we all needed some understanding, and it gave us perspective and relationships that we would have never given to each other, I don't think. So I think that 2-word check-in is what starts these conversations, and it's led to an hour-long discussion most of the times.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Can you give Leslie a round of applause? Great work.
Thank you.
And just something that was on my heart as you guys were talking, I really appreciate the conversation. But this young lady, thanks for the bravery of bringing that up. In 2016, I lost my father, and God brings different people into your life at different times. And Stillwater Hospice, which was visiting nurse at the time, I actually worked through that with my mom through the grieving process. And it was a relief that there's something out there, and I try to get the word out as much as I possibly can because it's hard, right? It's a difficult situation, and you need that third party objective person, and your friends and family all come into a part of that. But take advantage of that because it's weird, and I want to give a shout out to Mary Shankster because she was a piece of that puzzle that actually led me to the internship on the board and actually understanding what they do. So amazing work. Thanks for everybody just being vulnerable today and asking those hard questions because grief is not easy and losing someone isn't easy either. And I'll turn it over to close us out.
Thank you. Can you give Leslie one more round of applause? Isn't she awesome? She's so great.